Hello everyone, welcome back to Origins. So, this part I'm just going to be reading the codexes because I want to learn more about the world of Dragon Age, and reading this will help me. And also, if you guys are interested, then we can both learn about this world together. And I know I have been reading some at the end of the videos, but I was like, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. I should just spend like an episode um, every couple videos just to catch up on read the codexes because I really love the lore and everything, so let's do it. And if you guys want, you can just opt out of it. You don't have to watch it. That's why I do this, so that you guys can just skip the episode. And if you want to stick around and learn about the world with me, then go right ahead. So we're gonna start. So we haven't read Bear. So Bear, no beast is more beloved by Dirthamen than the bear. When the world was new, the Earthmen gave one secret to each creature to keep. The foxes traded their secrets to Andril for wings. The hares shouted theirs to the treetops, so the birds sold theirs for gold and silver. Only the bears kept Dirthamen's gift deep within their dens. They slept the months away in company of their secrets and nothing else. When Dirthamen discovered what had been done with his gifts, he snatched the wings from the foxes, silenced the voices of the hares, and turned the birds into paupers. But the bears he honored for their steadfastness. Transcribed from a Dalish tale, 9-8 Dragon. Normally it is almost unheard for bears to attack travelers. They are in fact so shy and so inactive during the day, and most people never encounter bears at all. However, should a bear be provoked, they are remarkably dangerous. The normally placid-seeming creatures become enraged and can strike massive blows with their paws, capable of knocking a man off his feet. Wow. Genlock. These are the most common darkspawn in the underground. Stocky and tough Genlocks are notoriously difficult to kill, even by magic. Alphas. In any group of Genlock, there is usually one who is dominant as the tallest, strongest, and smartest of their kind. Alphas serve as sort of a commander, directing or bullying the others in combat. Emissaries, the most intelligent of the alphas, become gifted sorcerers with many abilities akin to blood magic. These are the emissaries, and they usually only appear during a blight. Ogre. Towering over their darkspawn kin, the massive ogres are a rare sight on the battlefield. Traditionally, they only appear during a blight, but some records claim that ogres have been spotted in the deep roads, hunting alone or in small groups. At least one report by the Grey Wardens claimed that an ogre was spotted alone in the Kokari wilds in 919 Dragon. Though he was weakened and easily dispatched, up to 100 of these creatures can accompany a darkspawn horde at any one time during a blight, often using their great strength to burst through fortifications and demolish the front lines of the opposing army. They use brute force to charge their enemies, like bulls slam the ground with their fists to shake enemies off their feet and hurl giant rocks into the face of oncoming foes. Melee can be difficult against a giant that snatches a warrior up in one hand, crushing the life out of him, or beating him into oblivion with the other hand. Whoa, that's horrible. That reminds me of that scene in Game of Thrones when the little girl stabs that one thing and then he crushes her. That was like brutal. I don't. Yeah, anyways, the nimble can try to wiggle his way free, or an ally can attempt to array his stunning blows on an ogre to free the comrade in danger. Grey Warden lore urges caution when slaying an ogre, unless it is ensured that they have received a major wound to the head or the heart. It is possible that they are lying dormant and will regenerate to full health within a matter of minutes. During a blight, most Grey Wardens recommend burning all darkspawn to ashes, dead ogres in particular. Ooh. That's brutal. So we're done with creatures. Let's go to items. Oh, one. Okay. So Havard's Aegis. Havard was Mafarath's closest friend. They were children together in the same Avar clan. They fought side by side in so many battles that Mafarath dubbed him Havard of Aegis, better to have at his side than any shield. Mafarath brought Havard with him to meet with the Tevinters. It was unthinkable to stand before his enemies without his Aegis. When he understood that Mafarath was giving Andraste over to be executed, Havard, unwillingly to draw swords against his friend and liege, placed himself between Andraste and the Tevinter soldiers. The Tevinters struck him down, and Mafarath left him for dead. But Aegis was not so easily destroyed. Havard lived and made his way gravely wounded to the gates of Menrethus to stop the execution. Too late, he found only the ashes of the prophet left to unwind and rain. When his fingers touched the ash, his ears filled with song, and he saw a vision of Andraste dressed in cloth of starlight. She knelt at his side, saying, "Rise, Aegis of the faith. The Maker shall never forget you, so long as I remember." His wound healed instantly, and with new strength Havard gathered up Andraste's remains and carried them safely back to the lands of Alamari. God, I just love, the world building of this. Wow. They really did this. So, magic and religion. I think I read this, the Aeonar, so let's go to the Maker. There was no word, for heaven or for earth, for sea or sky. All that existed was silence. Then the voice of the Maker rang out, the first word, and his word became all that might be. Dream and idea, hope and fear, endless possibilities, and from it made his firstborn, and he said to them, "In my image I forgive you, or to you I give domination, over all that exists but your will. May all things be done." Then in the center of heaven he called forth, a city with towers of gold, streets with music for cobblestones, and banners which flew without wind. There he dwelled, waiting to see the wonders his children would create. The children of the Maker gathered before his golden throne and sang hymns of praise unending, but their songs were the songs of cobblestones. They shone with golden light, reflected from the Maker's throne. They held forth the banners that flew on their own. And the voice of the Maker shook the fade, saying, "In my image I have wrought, my firstborn, you have been given domination over all that exists, but your will, by your will. All things are done, yet you do nothing. The realm I have given you, is formless, ever changing." And he knew he had wrought amiss, so the Maker turned from his firstborn and took from the fade a measuring of its living flesh, and placed apart from its spirits, and spoke to it, saying, "Here I decree opposition in all things, for earth, sky, for winter, summer, for darkness, light. By my will alone in the balance sundered, and the world given new life. And no longer was it formless, ever changing, but held fast, immutable, with words for heaven and for earth, sea, and sky. At last did the Maker, from the living world, make men immutable as the substance of the earth, with souls made of dreams and idea, hope and fear, endless possibilities. Then the Maker said, "To you, my second-born, I grant you this gift. In your heart shall burn an unquenchable flame, all-consuming and never satisfied. From the frayed I crafted you, and to the fade you shall return, each night in this dream, that you may always remember me." And then the Maker sealed the gates of the golden city. And there he dwelled, waiting to see the wonders his children he would create. Thronodes 5:1-8. Oh my God, in your heart shall burn, you guys. I love this. Oh man. Oh, I love it. Okay, let's keep going. 91. The Sacred Ashes of Andraste. Only one person witnessed Mafarath's betrayal. Havard of Aegis, a childhood friend of Mafarath, has accompanied his chief to the meeting with the Tevinters, not realizing what was planned. When he understood that Mafarath was giving Andraste over to be executed, Havard, unwillingly to draw swords against his friend and liege, placed himself between Andraste and the Tevinter soldiers. The Tevinter struck him down, and Mafarath left him for dead. Gravely wounded, Havard made his way to the gates of the Minrethus to stop the execution. When he reached it, the terrible deed was already done. The armies on the plains long since dispersed. Havard, cursing his weakness, gathered the earthly remains of Andraste that had been left to the wind and rain, and wept. When his fingers touched the pile of ash, and his ears filled with song, and he saw before him a vision of Andraste, dressed in cloth made of starlight, she knelt at his side, saying, "The Maker shall never forget you as long as I remember." The song faded and the vision with it, and Havard was alone, but his wounds were healed. With new strength, Havard took up the ashes of Our Lady and bore them back to the lands of Alamari, from Thea's Myth and Legends by Brother Genitive. Interesting, the Sacred I know the Temple of Sacred Ashes because of Inquisition, but it's interesting to learn more about that. The History of the Dryden's. I'm not sure if I read this. I guess not. So, in the years following the siege of Soldier's Peak, all those who carried The Dryden's names were hunted by King Arlen's forces. Our noble Dryden name was smeared, and all lands and holdings belonging to the Drydens were sieged by the crown. The king feared that the rebellion started by Sophia would be kept alive by her loyal friends and family, and anyone with connections to the Dryden suffered greatly. It is little wonder then that the few remaining Drydens found themselves with no allies and nowhere to turn. Tobin Dryden, Sophia's brother and guardian of her young son, who had no choice but to flee for Eldon. Um, Tobin brought passage to Antiva on a merchant vessel and traveled under the name of De Rocher. Once in Antiva, Tobin set about building a new quiet life for himself and his nephew. He started a small business and eventually made a name for himself as a trader. The De Rocher merchant family prospered, and the name Dryden was almost forgotten. However, in 815, blessed Sylvie de Rocher uncovered old documents belonging to Tobin and pieced together the family's history. In her pride and perhaps her naivete, Sylvie reclaimed the name Dryden and returned to Ferelden. King Arlen lies dead, and the Dryden name lives on. Our family had survived, or even thrived, since the death of Sophia Dryden. The nobles of Ferelden may still spit on the Dryden name, but we Drydens know all that Sophia Dryden was greater than them, almost a queen and a hero of the people of Ferelden. From the personal files of Levi Dryden, merchant. It's just merchant. Okay. Oh, there's like a lot that we need to unlock. So the Chasten. The Chasten Wilders have lived in the Kakari Wilds since the first war with the Alamari drove them southward a millennium ago. According to their own lore, they had always been a forest-dwelling people that had adapted quickly to their new home. Game and fish are plentiful in the wetlands, and the Chasten thrived. For a time, they and the hill-dwelling Avars were true threats to the northern lowlands. The Tevinter Imperium had arrived and was hard-pressed to keep back the waves of invasion from the south and the west. The fortress of Ostagar was built specifically to watch for the Chasten hordes venturing north of the tree line. It was not until the legendary warrior Hafar soundly defeated the Chasten in the first half of the Divine Age that the question of their ability to contest the lowlands was settled permanently. Today the Chastens are considered largely peaceful, though their ways are still primitive compared to our own. In the Kakari wilds, they live in strange-looking huts built on stilts or even built into the great treetops. They paint their faces and are split into small tribes, ruled by shamans like those among the Avars. There are many tales of these shamans having learned their magic there are many tales of these shamans having learned their magic from the witches of the wild, witches that inspired as much terror as they do in awe and gratitude, even if there is not definitive proof they exist. In particular, the tale of Flemeth, the greatest witch of the wild, is celebrated amongst all tribes. While there is no way to know how many there are in the wilds today, few travelers pass through the forest. Tell of Chasten eking out an existence even from the frozen wastelands of the far south. One can assume that should the Chasten ever organize themselves once more, we might have reason to fear them here in Ferelden. We ignore them at our peril. From Ferelden Folklore and History by Sister Petrine Chantry, Scholar. Lake Calenhad. Lake Calenhad is shaped like a bunny. Stop! I can't get that out of my head. I love Colin. Okay, let's read it. Lake Callahan. The waters of Lake Callahan are steeped in legends. The Avar people say that it was once the site of Belenes, the mountains which stood at the center of the world, from which the Korth of the mountain's father surveyed the earth and sky, but it was destroyed in the battle between the Korth and the Serpent Nathramar, leaving only a vast crater behind. When the Lady of the Skies saw that Belenes was gone, she wept and her tears filled the crater, making the lake. Interesting. The Tevinters believed that the waters of Lake Calenhad were blessed by the Razakael god of mysteries, and that those who drank from them were granted special insights. This was why they built the great tower on an island in the middle of the lake, hoping that the powers of the lake would aid their magical research. But most of us know how the legend of King Calenhad, which gives us the place its name. It is said that Calenhad Therin spent a year and a day in the Tower of the Magi. Each day he drew a single cup full of water from the lake and carried it to the formari at the top of the tower. By magic, each cup of water was forged into a single ring of the mail armor the circle gave to Calenhad. In that armor, made from the life blood of the land itself, no blade could strike him, no arrow pierce him, so long as he stood on Ferelden soil. From Theodas, Myth and Legends by Sister Petrine Chauntry's Scholar. Okay, we got 2 more. Lothering. In ancient times, Lothering was a little more than a trading post that served the fortress of Ostagar to the south. Nowadays it is larger, serving Redcliffe and the community of merchants and surface dwarves near Osamar. Its location on the North Road gives it strategic value, so control of Lothering had historically been a matter of contention between the southern Bannorn and the south-reaching Arling. King Calenhad himself stepped in and awarded the town to Southreach in the Exalted Age, which had largely ended the feud, or at least the appearance of it. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chauntry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. Interesting. Redcliffe. King Calenhad Therin once famously declared, "The fate of Redcliffe is the fate of all Ferelden." Certainly the castle is the first and last defense for the first soul of land route into Ferelden, and the country has never fallen into any force that did not first capture Redcliffe. The castle, which, despite being 3 times captured, is popularly described as unassailable, also guards one of the largest and most prosperous towns in Ferelden. Redcliffe village is well situated near the mountain pass in Orzammar and the Orlesian border, and so serves as center of foreign trade. For these reasons, Redcliffe is accounted an Arling despite the smallness of the domain. The inhabitants of Redcliffe village are primarily fishermen or merchants who ship dwarven gods through the pass of Orlais to Denerim. When the entire village smells of smoked fish on certain lake autumn mornings, the merchants in their finery do their utmost to pretend otherwise. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chauntry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. Homeboy's doing a lot, isn't he? Let's read some characters. Oh, there's a lot that we gotta go through. Okay, I don't think they'll be long. So Alistair, you know one good thing about the Blight is how it brings people together. Alistair was a novice Templar when Duncan recruited him into the Grey Wardens, or rescued him, as Alistair would say. His mother was a serving girl, who died when Alistair was very young. He was raised by Eamon Guerin, an Arl of Redcliffe for a time. The Arl's wife, Isolde, suspected the reason her husband took an interest in the welfare of a servant's child was that Alistair was Eamon's son. She insisted that the boy be sent away to the Chauntry. Isolde's suspicions were never unfounded, however. Alistair was not Eamon's son, but King Merrick's. Eamon sheltered the boy to hide his existence from Queen Rowan, Eamon's sister. That's Alistair. Queen Honora! So I know her. She was in Inquisition. She was queen while Alistair was king. So that's kind of a spoiler, I guess, for a route in Origins that he becomes king. But I don't know what I'm gonna do in terms of his character and what I want his end to be. There's a lot of endings, guys. I know this. Don't worry. I know. And I think I know what I want to do with him in terms of his end, but I don't know. Because I know you pick a certain things happen in Inquisition, so it's like, I don't know. But I think I know where I'm leaning towards. So, Queen Honora, you have been given the gift of freedom by our forebears. Let us not squander it. The only child of the war hero, Lorraine MacTier, Honora has never been one to stay quietly in the background. It is common knowledge that in the 5 years, Honora and Kaelin held the throne together. She was the one wielding the power. She is held in much higher esteem than her husband by the people of Ferelden, nobility and commoners alike, and commands and respect even of foreign nations, having once inspired Empress Celine of Orlais to declare Honora of Ferelden as a solitary rose among brambles. So Empress Celine! Girl! King Kalen, Theron, you hope for a war like in the tales. A king riding with the fabled Grey Wardens against a tainted god, son of the legendary King Merrick Theron. Kalen was the first Ferelden king born into the land free from foreign rule in 2 generations. Since his father's dead, he had held the throne alongside his queen, Nora. Oh, he fell in battle alongside Duncan and Ostagar. Oh, gosh dang it, you guys. Sir Catherine. Some of us know what honor and loyalty are. Catherine came to Lohain's service the hard way. She belonged to a poor family and was out doing work on the farm when she saw a man on horseback being attacked by several bandits. She rushed to his assistance and found out belatedly that the man she saved was none other than the great hero Lohain. Though she was hardly more than a child, he took her in, offering her a position with his soldiers, and she climbed through the ranks through her sheer determination, becoming the commander of Merrick's shield. Lohain's elite soldiers was the proudest moment of her life. Oh, my puppy! The Mabari is clear enough to speak and wise enough not to know. Ferelden proverb. Layla found the Mabari in the camp in Ostagar. His master was killed in the wilds, and Swiper fell ill from biting the darkspawn in battle. Swiper seems to have chosen Layla as new master now, seeking Layla out after the battle of Ostagar and warning of an impending darkspawn attack. Oh, Duncan. Men and women from every race, warrior and mages, barbarians and kings, the Grey Warden sacrificed everything to stem the tide of darkness and prevailed. Like many others, Duncan gave up on his family name. When he joined the ranks of wardens, a symbolic gesture of cutting ties, he might say this was a convenience in his case. However, his mother was from Anderfels, his father from Tevinter. His childhood was spent in the Free Marches and Orlais. His people were everywhere and his homeland was nowhere. He was given the almost impossible task of leading the Wardens in Ferelden, a kingdom that had thrown the Order out over 200 years earlier. Facing local suspicion and hostility, he set about finding recruits. He was killed in battle against overwhelming numbers of Darkspawn at Ostagar alongside King Kalen. Arl Eamon Garin. Nobility does not exist without obligations. We owe all we have, even our lives, to our land and our people. At the maternal uncle of King Kalen, Arl Eamon is one of the king's most trusted advisors. Red Cliff. While not a large or especially wealthy part of Ferelden, is a critical strategic location. The fortress guards in the western pass that lead to Orlais, as well as a major trade route with Ortzamar, as well as Ortzamar, a well-respected man, though not the most charismatic. King Kalen once said of him, "My uncle Eamon is a man everyone thinks of, well, when they remember to think of him at all." Philemeth. You are required to do nothing, lest of all believe. Ages ago, legend says that Ben Convar took to wife a beautiful young woman who harbored a secret talent for magic. Philemeth of Highever, and for a time they lived happily until the arrival of a young poet, Osin, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the Chashan tribes for help and hid from Conobar's wrath in the wilds, until word came to them that Conobar lay dying. His last wish was to see Philemeth's fates one final time. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Convar killed Osin and imprisoned Philemeth to the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Philemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world to wreak vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as she planned. The spirits took possession of her, turning Philemeth into an abomination, a twisted, maddened creature. She slaughtered the Conobar and all his men and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years, Philemeth plotted, stealing men from the Chassan to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill men. With fear, these Rakari witches led an army of the Chassan from the wilds to strike at the Elamari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and all these witches burned, or so they say. But even now, the Wilders whispered that Philemeth live in the marsh, and she and her daughters steal those men who come near. Morgan's mother saved the last Grey Wardens from death at the top of the tower of Ishal, but just who or what, Philemeth is truly a mystery. Knight Commander Greagor. Your magic is a gift, but it's also a curse. The Circle of Magi has trained you, and we Templars of the Chantry stand vigil to ensure that the training is adequate. Greyman Taciturn Greagor had been Knight Commander of the Templar forces stationed at the Circle Tower. for so many years that hardly anyone except the first enchanter recalls that he is not simply part of the tower itself. First Enchanter Irving. If you want to survive, you must learn the rules and realize that sometimes sacrifices are necessary. There is no higher office in the Circle Tower than that of the First Enchanter. The one who holds this title must not only be an able administrator, but also a mentor, leader, and surrogate parent to all the mages of the tower. Irving had proved himself to be all these things with an additional dose of cunning. Most apprentices know that little goes on in the tower that Irving does not know. He can soothe Templars angered by some childish magical prank at the same time that he lauds the pranksters and everyone walks away satisfied. Interesting. Isn't Irving the one that kicked me out? Arlessa is Isolde. For the one who delivers the sacred ashes of Our Lady, we have the esteem of Redcliffe and all the riches it is in my power to grant. Why couldn't I say that? Anyways, the Arling of Redcliffe was a source of constant trouble for Emperor Revealed during the occupation. It was rumored that since each new report sent the emperor into a fit of violent rage, his court had taken to poisoning messengers before they could deliver their accounts. This old family was the tenth to be given the difficult task of governing Redcliffe, and since most of the previous Arls had either been murdered by their bands or beheaded by the emperor, they did not approach the job with a great deal of enthusiasm. Isolde met Aemon, not realizing he was the rightful heir to her father's domain, and quickly became smitten with him for being part of the resistance. Never mind, it was her family that he was resisting. Perhaps a bit too romantic for her own good, she insisted upon staying behind with Aemon when the rest of her family was driven out. Leliana. In the closeter, away from the fuss and the flurry of the cities, I found peace, and in that stillness I could hear the Maker. A lay sister of the Chantry who could beat the stuffing out of trained mercenaries would be notable enough, but one who also claims to have been sent to fight the Darkspawn by the Maker himself is unusual to say the least. She joined Alistair and Layla in Lothering, insisted that she would prove herself useful. Oh, I love you, Leliana. Lohan Mactir, understand this. I will brook no threat to this nation from you or anyone. Lohan was born a farmer during a time when his country was under foreign occupation. When he was still a boy, he joined the resistance where his considerable tactile genius quickly became apparent. He became close friends with Prince Merrick, the last true heir to the Ferelden throne, and together they led the rebels to drive out of the forces of the Orlesian Empire. Merrick raised his friend to the nobility, and Lohan is now more of a symbol than a man. He represents the Ferelden idea of hard work and independence. During the Battle of Ostagar, he fled the field, leaving King Kaelin and the Grey Wardens to die. He then returned to Dinnerem and declared himself the regent to his daughter, Queen Honora, demanding that Ferelden follow him against the Darkspawn, upsetting a great many of the bands. Morrigan, Witch of the Wilds, such an idle fantasies, those legends. Have you no minds of your own? Of herself, Morrigan says little. She does not deny being a Witch of the Wilds, but beyond that, everything about her is unquestioned. Her mother claims to be Flemeth. If that's true, the Morrigan might well be a very popular witch for the tales of the daughters of Flemeth to tell twisted, monstrous women who can kill a man with fear. She was made to accompany the surviving Grey Wardens. The payment, Flemeth said, for saving their lives at the Tower of Ishal. She literally gave Morrigan as like a gift, a payment? That's not right. Whatever. Sten. Either you have an inviolable memory or pitiable life to know nothing of regret. The northern islands are remote, lush jungles that harbor cities rumored to be the most extraordinary ever built. These are the lands, the Kinari lands, that no foreign eyes have ever seen. Only the stories of the three exalted marches waged against the giants have reached the south until the arrival of Sten. The stoic giant in the cage was surely the strangest thing the people of Lothringen had ever seen, until the blade struck. Bantegan Garen. The Benorn will not bow to you simply because you demand it. Younger brother to Arl Eamon of Redcliffe, and uncle to King Kaelin, Tegan holds the Benorn of Rainsafir, a tiny province of Redcliffe squeezed between the Frostback Mountains and Lake Callahan Van Tegan avoids the Denerim court, except to go hunting with his nephew, and rarely makes himself heard at a landsmeet, preferring to leave politics to his brother. Sophia Dryden. Oh. Sophia Dryden is Ferelda's light and her most brilliant jewel. Nothing on this earth can ever quench her fire. Arlissa Sophia Dryden was the youngest Arlen rival for the throne of Ferelden. Dryden was a strong and charismatic leader with much support from the Benorn. When Arlen finally won the crown, Dryden refused to relent. She pushed her claim was caught and accused of treason. Her sympathizers continued to support her, however. In order to appease them, Dryden was spared execution and forced to join the Grey Wardens instead. Dryden survived the joining and dazzled the Grey Wardens at Soldier's Peak with her leadership, skills, and charm. She eventually rose through the ranks to become the Grey Warden commander of Ferelden. Before Commander Dryden, the Grey Wardens were seen as a relic of an older time and an unnecessary drain on the nobles' coffers. Dryden thought with the drain on her nobles' coffers. Dryden thought with her political connections reinvigorated the wardens and rapidly increased the numbers. In the meantime, King Arlen proved himself a devious king, willing to go to brutal lengths to silence his opponents. Arlen's reign of terror grew worse with each passing year, and some of the bands approached Commander Dryden in desperation, begging her to intercede. She agreed, and thus was a rebellion against King Arlen born. Arlen learned that the rebellion and took steps to end it. He publicly suspended all tithing to the Grey Wardens, and declared that they were no longer welcome in Ferelden. Some of the wardens, mindful that they were supposed to remain politically neutral, felt disgraced by Dryden's involvement of Ferelden politics and left by her side. Even as the king's forces lay to siege the Soldier's Peak, the siege took months and ended with the death of Sophia Dryden. From the passage of personal files of Levi Dryden, merchant. So we only have one books and songs, so I'll just read that quickly, and I'll read all of this later. So by the wind that stirs their shallow graves, carried their songs across the sands. Head our words, hear our cry, and the grey are sworn. In peace we lie, head our words, hear our cry, our names recalled, we cannot die, when darkness comes and swallows lay. Heed our words, and we shall rise. From the Ballad of Islay, said to have been written after the Battle of Islay, which ended the Fourth Blight, 512 exalted. Cool. So that's it. If you guys are still here, thank you. I'm sorry that I can't pronounce a lot of things. It's gonna be like that for this whole series. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will hopefully see you in the next part where things actually happen. Bye!